At this point, we've been able to create a user account, and we've also been able to handle what happens when a user account is not created or when an account actually exists. Now, the next thing we're going to do is to implement an endpoint that's going to allow us to log in or to create a session. So when using JWT Authentication, we are normally provided with what is called a JWT. Now, this can be an access token that's going to allow us to access other routes of our endpoint that need us to be having some sort of like access control to get to them. Now, this is where Flask-JWT comes in. So Flask-JWT is that extension that's going to allow us to carry out this functionality. So to begin, we're going to begin by installing our Flask-JWT Extended. So I'm going to head over to VS Code, and the first thing I have to do is to go within my terminal. So I'll make sure that I'm inside my virtual environment, and what I have to do is to say pip install, and in this case I'm going to install Flask-JWT Extended. And once this is installed, the next thing will be to freeze it to our requirements.txt file. And also seem like I already installed it, because I actually set this up in the previous video. So once we have this within our virtual environment, then the next thing is going to be to set it up to work within our app. So the first thing is going to be to basically configure it to work with our application. So to do that, we're going to head over to our .env file, and we're going to add one really important environment variable, and that's going to be our secret key, or our JWT secret key. Now, the JWT secret key is going to be the key that's going to allow us to create a JWT. So what normally happens is when you create a JWT, you sign it with a secret key that's going to be used to basically be able to work with a JWT, just like when you're transmitting some information within that JWT. So the issue of the JWT will hide some sort of information within the JWT, and then the user who that JWT is being sent to will have to have the secret key for them to be able to know what's inside the JWT. So what we're going to do is to set this up. So I'm going to be using secrets, which is a Python inbuilt module for creating random secret strings. So I'll come at the terminal right here and say Python, and inside here I'm going to import secrets. So let me actually make this secrets, and what I'm going to do is to say secrets.token hex, and let me say I want to provide 12, and this is going to create a 12-byte. I don't know if it's actually bytes, but it's going to create this unique hexadecimal string. So what I'll do is to copy it, and what I'll do is to come right in here and say Flask. So it's actually going to be Flask, and then underscore. So in this case, we are going to call this our JWT secret key. So once we've been able to do that, I'll say equals, and then I have to provide the JWT secret key. So it's going to be this unique hexadecimal string right here. So once we've been able to do that, I'm going to Ctrl Z to get out of our terminal, and I'm going to clean up my terminal. So the next thing is going to be for us to initialize it within our app. So we're going to do the same thing we did for Flask SQL Alchemy. So basically what Flask-JWT Extended will provide for us is going to be a class called a JWT Manager class. And when we are using Flask-JWT Extended, we shall have to basically create an instance of this JWT Manager class, and then initialize it within our app, or initialize it to work with our app. So we're going to begin by importing it. So I'll come right here and say from Flask. So this will be from Flask-JWT Extended. We are going to import our JWT Manager class, and once we've been able to import it, we're going to create an instance for it. So I'll come right down here and say the our JWT object is going to be equal to an instance to our JWT Manager class. And once we've been able to do that, then the next thing is going to be for us to basically integrate this or initialize it within our app. So what I'm going to do is head over to our main.py. So we search for our main.py, And within main.py, we are going to import from our extensions the JWT object. So we're going to come and initialize it within our app. So shall just come and say JWT dot. So it's actually going to be JWT dot init. And in this case, we shall have app, and then we shall have provide our app instance. So once we've been able to do this, then the next thing is going to be for us to implement our endpoint for logging in, for creating our tokens. So to do that, I'm going to head over to our authentication module right here. And what I have to do is to use our blueprint to create that specific method. So I'll come down here, and all I have to do is to say at auth blueprint dot, in this case, shall call this post. So this is going to be a post method, and it's the one that's going to be responsible for basically creating our token pairs. So in this case, we are going to call this, let's say, create or create slash token, or feel free to call it, let's actually just call it login. So when you call this login, what you're going to have is the handler function that's going to help us to log in our user. So we shall basically come right here and say login user. So what we expect here is to return a JWT pair. So this JWT pair is going to be signed, or is going to be having the identity of that user for whom that token has been basically provided for. So what happens is when you provide your credentials of your username and password, or your email and password, what shall happen is we shall have to check if the user exists, and if the user exists, we shall have to then issue them a token pair. So a token pair is going to consist of an access token as well as a refresh token. So the access token is that will be specific to helping the user to access those protected endpoints, and the refresh token is going to be for security purposes. Now, the refresh token is going to allow the user to gain their access when their access token has expired. So let's look at how we can set this up. The first thing we're going to do is to basically check if our user exists, and if our user exists, we are going to also have to check if their password actually matches the password that they provided, or the password hash that's actually stored in our database. So to do that, we are going to first of all come right here, and what we're going to do is to basically get the data that's going to come from this request. We shall say that our data is going to be equal to request.get_JSON. And once we've been able to do that, then we're going to get our different credentials. So we shall get the username as well as a password for that user. Now, we're going to go ahead and first of all query for the user if the user actually exists. So to do that, we're going to say user is going to be equal to user dot, in this case, we shall basically use this specific method that we called user.getByUsername. So what this will take in is going to be our username. So we can say that our username is going to be equal to what we shall get from our data as our username. So we're going to say data.get, and in this case, we shall provide our username. So once we've been able to do that, then the next thing is going to be to basically check if our user exists. So we shall say if user, so that's if the user exists, and let's say we also want to check if that password actually matches the password hash that's in the database. So we shall say if user, and so we can say if user, and in this case we want to actually say user dot check password. So in this case, we actually, I don't know if we actually implemented that specific field. So that's actually going to be, let's go back to our models.py and see. So within our models.py, we actually created that method and called it check password. So if we come right here and call the check password method, so in here, what we shall have to do is to provide our password. So we're going to say password, and our password is actually going to be our data.get, and we shall have to provide our password. So in this case, we shall say that we shall provide our password just like you see right here. So once we've been able to do that, then the next thing is going to be for us to basically provide the JWT pair. Now there are two functions, or basically functions, that are provided by Flask-JWT-Extended that are going to help us to be able to do that. So we're going to go ahead and import them. So I'll go at the top right here, and all I have to do is to say from Flask-JWT-Extended, we are going to import our create access token function and our create refresh token function. Now this is what our token pair is going to be. It's going to be just a dictionary containing our access token as well as our refresh token. But what we also want to do is to provide an identity to our access token. Think of it as just hiding the information of the current user within our specific JWTs. So we're going to come right here, and what we're going to do is to basically go ahead and return a response. So in this case, we are going to say return JSONify, and in this case we shall provide our dictionary, and this dictionary is going to have our tokens. So we can actually just return a token pair, or feel free to call it token or any other thing, or let's actually provide it in this message. So we can provide a message for logged in successfully. So in this case, you can say logged in, and then we shall also have to provide the JWT pair. So what I'm going to do is to basically push this to a new line. So I'll just come right here. Let me actually make this be a little bit more organized. So our message is going to be logged in, and we shall have our token pair. So in this case, we shall have our tokens, and in this case, we shall have basically an a dictionary containing both the access and the refresh token. Now in this case, we are going to say access, and in this case we shall basically provide our access token. So let's say access token, and then we're also going to have our refresh, and in this case our refresh token is going to be our refresh token. So once we've been able to do that, then the next thing is going to be for us to create these two tokens. So what I'll do is to come right here and basically call or create these two variables. This is actually access token. So we shall just come right here and say that our access token is going to be equal to a call to the create access token function, and we shall have to provide the identity right here. So the identity is going to be basically the identity of this token, or the data that we shall have to pass within this JWT. We can also add additional claims. So additional claims can be in a JSON serializable format, or the information, the specific information that we may want to hide within that specific JWT. So we shall just come right in here and say that our identity is going to be the username of that specific user. So we shall just basically come right here and say that our identity is going to be user.username. So that's going to create our access token. The next thing is going to be to basically create our refresh token. So shall just come right here and say refresh token is going to be equal to a call to the create refresh token function, and this will also have the identity as the identity of our user. So in this case, shall just come right here and say that we shall have our user.username. So once we've been able to do that, I'll go ahead and save. So let's also return a status code right here after creating our user. So just come and say comma, and then this will return a 200 status code. So we also need to handle that scenario in which we have not basically been able to log in. So if we try to return a response, so in this case I'll just come right here and say return JSONify, and in this case I'll have to say error. So shall just basically say that invalid, so let's just say actually invalid username, or password. And in this case, we shall basically raise an error. So let's say a 400 bad request error. So let's try to test this out. So what I'm going to do is to go ahead and basically access that endpoint on our /auth/login. So if I go to Postman right here, I'm going to create a new request, and this request is going to be for creating the JWT pair. So I'm going to say create JWT pair. So once I've been able to do that, I'm going to come right here, and all I have to do is to say that this is going to be a post method. So I'll create this. So it should be /localhost5000/auth/login. So just come right here and say localhost. Sorry for this. So this will be localhost /5000/auth and then /login. So once you have our endpoint right here, we are now going to go ahead and basically be able to create our access token. So to do that, we're just simply going to come right here and go to our body. So I'll go to body, and then I'll set it to be raw. In this case, shall set it to be JSON. So shall provide our credentials. Let me actually copy what we have here. So I'll just copy this object and then provide it right here. So shall have this except for the email. So in this case, shall have our username and password, and when we send, shall now have page not found. I don't know why this is not found. Let me actually see. We called it login, so I think it doesn't require the /. Let me just check this out. So if I send, we're now going to see that's going to return our JWT pair. So we shall have the access token as well as the refresh token being returned right now. So let's also try a scenario in which we have a user who doesn't exist. So let me say I added a 4 onto our username. So if I send this, shall now see our error of 400 bad requests, and then our error is going to be invalid username or password. So at this point, we've been able to generate our JWT tokens.